She bandaged the Mafia boss's wounds. Next day, 200 of his men surrounded her house. Before we dive into the story, tell me where in the world you're watching from, and if this story steals your heart, please hit subscribe. The mist was a shroud, swallowing the small, ivy-covered house until it seemed to float, untethered from the cliffs and the dark, churning sea below. Jill lived in that mist, curated it, used it as a buffer against a world that had tried too hard to be loud. Her life was a quiet composition of steeped tea, the worn pages of old books, and the steady, antiseptic rhythm of her work as a nurse. It was a life built to numb a specific, hollow ache, a quiet sadness that had settled in her deep hazel eyes and never quite left. This quiet was shattered not by a sound, but by a weight against her front door, a heavy, scraping thud that was not the wind and not the sea. She froze, her hand halfway to the kettle, the silence of the cottage suddenly becoming thin and brittle. Another sound, a low groan unmistakably human. Her sadness was quiet, but her training was not. Jill moved to the door, her heart a cold knot in her chest, and pulled it open. The mist coiled in, bringing with it the scent of iron and rain, and the body of a man slumped across her welcome mat. He was large, broad-shouldered, and dressed in the ruins of what had once been an exquisitely tailored suit, now black with rain and something darker. He was unconscious but breathing, a ragged, wet sound that tore through the night. She should have called the carabinieri. She should have locked the door, retreated into her carefully constructed quiet, and pretended the world had not come knocking. But she saw the unnatural angle of his body, the way his hand was clutching his side, and the nurse in her took over. Her quiet sadness had come from a place of weakness, a time when she had been controlled and silenced. Her work was her strength. With a strength she did not know she possessed, she hooked her arms under his and dragged him inside, a dead weight of muscle and damp wool. He collapsed onto her simple wooden floor, staining the worn rug with the evidence of his violent night. She locked the door, her hands shaking, and turned on every warm lamp in the small room, fighting back the encroaching shadows. He was younger than she first thought, perhaps in his mid-30s, with dark olive skin and short black hair slicked back from his high forehead. A faint, silvery scar ran from his jawline down the column of his neck, a silent testimony to a life lived far from her misty cliffs. She took a deep breath, fetched her medical bag, and knelt beside him. This was her world now, not the mist, but the crisis. Her hands, so often unsteady in her personal life, became bedrock. She cut away the expensive fabric of his suit jacket and shirt. The wound was on his right side, just under the ribs. A gunshot, she assessed, and a bad one. It was bleeding sluggishly, but the amount of blood he had left on her doorstep told her he was in serious trouble. As she worked, cleaning the wound with practiced, gentle motions, her fingers brushed against the cold steel of a holster strapped to his ankle. She paused. The gun was small, elegant, and deadly. This man was not just a victim, he was a participant. A cold draft of fear, more potent than the sea air, ran through her. He was danger. He was the world she had fled. She looked at his face, pale under the olive skin, his features drawn in pain even in unconsciousness. And she continued her work. She was a nurse. He was her patient. The rest did not matter. She worked for hours, the only sounds the click of her instruments, the slosh of antiseptic, and the man's labored breathing. She stitched the wound with neat, precise sutures, her cherry-brown hair falling from its loose bun to curtain her face. She bandaged his torso tightly, her gentle hands a stark contrast to the hard, scarred body beneath them. He was built like a predator, all coiled muscle and power, and seeing him so vulnerable on her floor felt like a profound violation of some natural law. As the first hint of a weaker, grayer light began to push at the windows, he stirred. His eyes snapped open. They were not brown or blue, but a flat, cold gray like a winter sky. They focused on her, sharp and assessing even through the fog of pain. He did not seem to see the cottage or the lamplight. He only saw her. "Angelo," he rasped, the name a broken thing. Then his eyes rolled back and he was gone again, lost to the delirium. Jill sat back on her heels, exhausted, her entire body aching from the effort of saving him. She did not know any Angelo. She covered him with her grandmother's quilt, a small, inadequate gesture against the cold radiating from him. She was too tired to move to her bed, too frightened to leave him alone. She curled up in the armchair opposite him, her gaze fixed on the slow, steady rise and fall of his bandaged chest. She watched the man who had brought the violence of Naples to her doorstep, and she fell asleep, her world tilted on an axis she could not comprehend. She woke to silence, a heavy, absolute silence that was different from her usual quiet. The lamps were still on, casting a sickly yellow glow in the full morning light. The armchair had left a crick in her neck. She looked at the floor. He was gone. The quilt was folded, not neatly, but placed deliberately on the floor where he had lain. Beside it was a pile of blood-soaked rags and the ruined pieces of his suit. The front door was closed, but unlocked. She rushed to it, pulling it open. The mist was thick, but the world was empty. Her lane was just her lane. There were no footprints, no blood trail. He had vanished as if he were a fevered dream, a manifestation of the storm. But the metallic smell of blood still hung in her small house, a phantom she could not erase. She sank to her knees, her steady hands trembling. The quiet she had worked so hard to build was gone, and she realized with a terrifying lurch that she did not feel relieved. She felt empty. Jill spent the morning in a frantic, useless ritual of cleaning. She scrubbed the floorboards where he had lain. The wood already stained a faint, dark color that would not lift. She laundered the quilt, watching the water in her basin turn a sickening pink. She threw away the bloodied rags, her hands shaking as she tied the bag. She was trying to erase him, to scrub the memory of his cold gray eyes and the scar along his jaw from her home, from her mind. But he was a splinter, lodged too deep. Her quiet felt wrong, predictive, as if the world were holding its breath. She made tea, but it tasted like ash. She looked out the window at her small, overgrown garden, the ivy clinging to the stones, and felt a tremor of fear. The mist was no longer a comfort. It felt like a place where things could hide. The sound began as a low vibration, felt more than heard, a thrumming that rattled the old glass in her windows. It was not a storm. It was not the sea. It was engines. Many engines. She crept to the window, pulling back the edge of the lace curtain. Her heart stopped. Her small, unpaved lane, barely wide enough for one car, was full. Black sedans, dozens of them, were parked with a terrifying military precision. They choked the road, their dark, polished surfaces gleaming dully in the mist. Men in sharp, dark suits were exiting the vehicles. They moved with a purpose that was quiet, efficient, and utterly menacing. They were not looking at her house. They were looking out, away from it, fanning out to the cliffs, to the road back to Naples. They were forming a perimeter. Jill stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. This was a nightmare. This was the police, the carabinieri, coming for her. She had harbored a criminal. She had removed a bullet. No, she had stitched a wound. She corrected herself, a technicality that would not matter. She was panicked, her quiet sadness rearing its head as a familiar, suffocating terror. This was what happened when you got involved. This was the loudness she had run from. A knock came at her door. It was not a frantic, pounding knock. It was a sharp, polite, firm rapping. 3 distinct sounds that echoed the terrible efficiency of the men outside. She stood frozen, her mind screaming at her to hide, to pretend she was not home, but the army outside told her that was a futile gesture. She smoothed her hair, pulling her robe tighter around her waist, and walked on unsteady legs to the door. She opened it. The man standing there was older, his hair a distinguished silver, his suit impeccable. His face was weathered, but his eyes were sharp and missed nothing. He was flanked by 2 other men, younger, built like mountains. "Signorina," the older man said, his voice a smooth baritone, respectful but laced with steel. "My name is Marco. I am the head of security for Alessandro Viri. I am here on his behalf." Jill's mind raced. Viri, the name meant nothing to her. I don't know who that is. I think you have the wrong house." Marco's lips quirked in a smile that did not touch his eyes. "No, Signorina, we have precisely the right house. The man you helped last night. His name is Alessandro Viri." He paused, letting the name settle as if it should mean something. "He is deeply grateful for your assistance. You saved his life." "He's gone," Jill said, her voice thin. "I don't want any trouble. I'm a nurse. I helped him, that's all. Please leave." "Your kindness has been noted, Signorina," Marco continued, as if she had not spoken. "Unfortunately, it has also been noted by the people who tried to kill him, the Falcone family." Now that name, she knew. Everyone in Naples knew the Falcones. An old, brutal family. A chill that had nothing to do with the mist settled deep in her bones. "They will, of course, assume you are an associate of Mr. Viri. They will assume you know things. They will see you as a loose end." "A loose end," she whispered, horrified. "Mr. Viri does not tolerate loose ends. He especially does not tolerate threats to those who have helped him. He has sent us to ensure your safety." "Ensure my safety," she repeated, looking past him at the men setting up a command post at the end of her lane. "This isn't safety. This is an invasion. I want you to leave, all of you." "That will not be possible," Marco said, his politeness an iron wall. "Our orders are clear." Just then, a final car, larger and heavier than the others, a black armored Maserati, purred to a stop directly in front of her gate. The men, all of them straightened, their postures shifting from alert to reverent. Marco stepped back. The rear door opened. The man who stepped out was the man from her floor, but he was a different creature entirely. His black hair was perfectly slicked back. He wore a devastatingly expensive suit, dark charcoal gray, that made him look taller, broader. He moved with no sign of the wound, save for a slight, controlled stiffness. He was the CEO of a dark empire, the dawn of a hidden world. He was Alessandro Viri. He walked up her small garden path, his cold gray eyes fixed on her. He stopped a few feet away, his presence so large it seemed to suck the air from her porch. He dismissed Marco with a flick of his fingers. He looked at Jill, his gaze traveling from her messy cherry-brown bun down her worn robe to her bare feet on the wooden porch. "You are Jill," he said. It was not a question. His voice was a low vibration, a rumble of power. "I am," she whispered, clutching her robe. "You saved my life." "I'm a nurse, it's what I do. I'm glad you are well. Now please, you have to leave, you cannot be here." He took a step closer. He was so tall. He smelled of expensive cologne, clean linen, and something uniquely him, something metallic and dangerous. "The men who did this to me," he said, his voice soft, "they are not nurses, they do not follow oaths, they do not value life, they know I was here. They know a woman in this house patched the hole they put in me. They will come back, not for me, for you." "I don't know anything," she pleaded, tears of sheer terror and frustration welling in her eyes. "I never saw you before last night. I don't know who you are." "You know my name now," he said simply. He raised a hand and she flinched, a reaction so ingrained from her past that she could not stop it. His eyes darkened. He did not touch her face but let his fingers hover, almost grazing her cheek. "I am Alessandro Viri, and I protect what is mine. You saved me, Infermiera. You put your hands on me. You are mine now." I am not yours," she choked out, horrified. "You are mine to protect," he corrected her, though it felt like no correction at all. "My men will stay. This house will be secured. You will not leave without an escort. This is not a request. This is not negotiable." He held her gaze, his cold gray eyes a promise. "The quiet life you had, it is over, but you will be safe." He turned, his long coat swirling, and walked back to his car, leaving her standing in the doorway of her home, a prisoner of the man whose life she had saved. The siege had begun. The days that followed were a waking nightmare of polite suffocation. Jill's small, ivy-covered cottage was no longer her sanctuary. It was a fortress, and she was its prisoner. Men in dark suits patrolled her garden, their footsteps a constant, crushing presence on the gravel path. They were polite, calling her signorina, offering to fetch her groceries, to run any errands. Their kindness was a smothering blanket, a reminder that she had no choice. Her phone line, her internet, her mail, it was all secured, which she knew meant it was monitored. The quiet sadness that had been her constant companion morphed into a raw, frantic anger. She had fled a man who sought to control her, only to be captured by one whose control was absolute, backed by an army. Alessandro himself was absent, a ghost king ruling from his fortress on the hills. He left her to Marco, who managed her confinement with an air of respectful apology that only made it more infuriating. "Mr. Viri is very busy, signorina," Marco would say. "He is, rearranging things, to ensure what happened to him does not happen again, and to ensure your safety is permanent." Jill would just nod, her hazel eyes flat, all the quiet warmth gone. She was a nurse. Her hands were meant to heal, to be active. Now they sat idle in her lap, and she felt herself beginning to fade, to become the ghost she had been before, but this time in a cage she could see. The incident happened on the third day. A small, rattling postal van, driven by an old man who had delivered her mail for years, turned down her lane. The reaction was instantaneous and terrifying. 2 black sedans blocked the road, and 4 men were out, guns drawn, surrounding the van before the old man could even put it in park. Jill watched from her window, her heart in her throat, as they pulled the trembling postman from his seat. Marco was there in a flash, speaking calmly, de-escalating, but the message was clear. The violence was not a threat. It was a coiled spring, ready to be released at any moment. The old man was eventually let go, his face ashen, and Jill knew he would never drive down her lane again. That evening, Alessandro Viri returned. He did not knock. She was in her small kitchen washing a cup when she felt his presence. She turned and he was there, filling the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the light. He was in another perfect suit, this one a deep navy. He looked at her, his cold gray eyes scanning the room, at the scrubbing brush in her hand, the fear in her eyes. "You saw what happened today," he said. "They nearly shot the postman," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "He's an old man, he's harmless." Today he was harmless, Alessandro agreed, stepping inside. Her small house seemed to shrink around him. Tomorrow it could be a car bomb, it could be a Falcone assassin dressed in a postal uniform. This house, it is made of wood and ivy. It cannot be secured. It is a death trap. "So leave," she spat. "Take your men and your guns and your war and leave me. They won't care about me if you are gone." "You are wrong," he said, his voice dropping, losing its boardroom chill and becoming something more personal, more dangerous. "They will care more. They will see you as the one person I left undefended. They will take you and they will use you to draw me out. And I," he paused, stepping closer, "will come. And I will burn their world to the ground to get you back. Is that the war you want, Infermiera?" She had no answer. She was trapped in his logic, in his dark, violent world. "You are not safe here," he said, his voice softening just a fraction. "So you will come with me to my home, where I know you are safe." "No," she said, a reflexive, weak sound. "This is my home." "It was," he said, not unkindly. "Now it is a liability." He gave her the illusion of a choice, a tactic she was beginning to recognize. "You can stay here, my men will remain, we will build a proper fence. We will put steel shutters on your windows. We will search every person who comes within a kilometer of this house. Your neighbors will be questioned. Your quiet life will become a very loud, very ugly siege. Or," he tilted his head, "you can come with me. To the villa, you will have your own space. A garden, a library, anything you wish. But you will be safe. No one will bother you." She looked around her small, beloved home, now tainted by the smell of his cologne and the presence of his violence. It was already a cage. He was just offering her a larger one. "And I'll be your prisoner there, just as I am here." "You will be my guest," he said, his gray eyes unreadable. "And you will be protected. I will not ask again, Jill. Pack a bag, you are coming with me." The drive up the hills was silent. The villa was not a home. It was a statement. A sprawling fortress of modern glass, white stone, and dark wood. It sat on the hills overlooking Naples like a hawk's nest, guarded by gates and men, and the sheer, dizzying drop to the city below. It was beautiful and cold, a perfect reflection of the man who owned it. She was given a suite of rooms that were larger than her entire cottage, with a balcony that looked out over the glittering bay. The walls were bare, the furniture luxurious but impersonal. It was a 5-star prison. The slow burn began. Alessandro was a ghost for the first few days, a commanding presence she heard but did not see. She heard his sharp, rapid-fire Italian echoing from his office down the hall, the sound of a king managing his empire. But at night, when the house fell into a heavy, guarded silence, he would find her. He would have dinner served for them on her private terrace. He sat opposite her, the city lights a diamond carpet below, and he would watch her. "Why do you live alone, Infermiera?" he asked one night, swirling wine in his glass. "I like the quiet," she said, her stock answer. "No," he said, setting the glass down. "You like the safety. You are hiding. From who?" She flinched, her past a bruise she did not want him to touch. "It's none of your business." "I have made you my business," he stated, not cruelly but as a fact. "The way you flinched on your porch when I raised my hand, the quiet sadness in your eyes, a man hurt you." She looked away at the lights. He liked to be in control. He told me what to wear, who to see. He said it was because he loved me, that he was protecting me." Alessandro's face darkened. He was a fool and a weakling. To control something is to break it, to protect it. That is different. He signaled for a servant to clear the plates. "He will not hurt you again." She looked at him, startled. "You, What did you do?" "I merely had a conversation with him," Alessandro said, his eyes cold. "He understands now that you are under new management. He will be moving to Milan." Jill felt sick. "You had no right." "I have every right," Alessandro said, standing. "You are in my house. You are under my protection. That protection is total." He was a monster, a controlling, terrifying monster. And yet the next day, a collection of old, leather-bound medical texts, books she had mentioned offhand she loved, appeared on her shelves. He had noted she shivered on the terrace, and the next evening a servant brought her a cashmere shawl, impossibly soft. He was listening. He was watching. His control was a seduction, a terrifying, gentle web. One night she found him in his vast, dark study, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. He was not working. He was just staring at the wall, his fingers tracing the faint scar on his jaw. He looked tired. He looked, for a moment, like the man on her floor. She entered without a word, took a seat opposite him. He watched her, his gray eyes hooded. "You should be in bed," he said. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice soft. He was silent for a long time. "Family," he said finally. "Loyalty, the price of it." He looked at his hand, then at her. "You are a healer, your hands are gentle, steady." He took her hand, his own large and warm, and lifted it. She tensed but did not pull away. He placed her fingers on his jaw, guiding them over the faint, raised line of the scar. His skin was rough, then smooth. It was an act of profound intimacy, a sharing of a secret. "A reminder," he whispered, his voice rough, "that loyalty is paid for in blood. That family is everything." His gray eyes were on her, and for the first time she saw them soften. Not just with exhaustion, but with something else, something vulnerable. He leaned in, his gaze dropping to her lips. She did not breathe. She did not move. This was it, the inevitable. He stopped just a fraction of an inch from her mouth, his breath warm on her skin. She could see the control warring with the impulse. He closed his eyes for a second, then pulled back, his jaw tight. "Not like this," he said, his voice a rasp. He released her hand. "Go to bed, Jill." He needed control. He needed to be the Dawn. But she had seen the man. And she left, her body shaking, knowing that she was more trapped by that one moment of vulnerability than she had ever been by his walls or his men. Jill felt herself disappearing. The luxurious suite, the endless, perfect meals, the deferential servants, it was an erasure. She was no longer Jill, the nurse. She was a possession, a fragile, valuable thing kept in a display case. The quiet sadness of her old life was preferable to this empty, gilded cage existence. She had to reclaim herself. She found Alessandro in his office, a vast room of glass that overlooked the sea, a god in his skybound throne. He was on the phone, his Italian sharp and commanding. He saw her, held up a finger, and finished his call with a brutal, final sentence. He hung up and swiveled his chair to face her. "You need something," he said, his gray eyes assessing. "I need to leave," she said, her hands closed so tightly her knuckles were white. "I need to go back to work. At the hospital, I am a nurse. I help people. I am not. Whatever this is." Alessandro's face did not change, but a coldness, a stillness, settled over him. "I have told you. It is not safe." "I don't care," she said, her voice rising, shaky but determined. "You can send your men with me. They can wait in the hall, but I cannot stay here. I cannot just sit. I will go insane." "No," he said. The word was flat, final. "You can't just forbid me." "I can," he said, standing up. He walked around the desk, his sheer size dominating the room. "And you are not a nurse anymore, Jill. Your life is here now. You help me." "Help you by being your pet, your prisoner." The words were out before she could stop them, sharp and bitter. "This isn't protection, Alessandro. This is control. You're just like him." Hair cracked, he froze. The comparison she saw instantly was a physical blow. It wounded him in a way the Falcon's bullets never could. His eyes went from cold to flat, dead ice. He grabbed her arm, his fingers biting into her skin, his control snapping. "Him," he hissed, his face close to hers. The worm who could not hold you. The weakling who used his hands because his will was pathetic. I am nothing like him." He tightened his grip, and she winced. "I am the man who will hold you." "You think this is a game. You think my world is polite." He dragged her to the glass wall, forcing her to look down at the glittering, peaceful city. "Down there," he said, his voice a low snarl. The Falcone family is bleeding because of me, because they touched me, and they know I came here to your little house. They know I have brought a woman to my house. They think you are my weakness." He turned her to face him, his other hand coming up to cup her jaw, forcing her to meet his gaze. "And I will not allow you to be weak. I will not allow you to be stupid. You will stay here where I can see you, where my men can protect you. You will stay. K. Piskai." She was trembling, terrified of this man, this stranger who had replaced the vulnerable lover she'd glimpsed. She nodded, tears of rage and fear stinging her eyes. He saw the tears and his expression faltered. The fury receded, replaced by a deep, weary frustration. He released her, his hands dropping to his sides. "Go to your room, Jill." The conflict with the Falcones escalated. Jill did not see it, but she felt it. The villa became a fortress on high alert. The number of guards doubled. Marco's face was a grim granite mask. Alessandro was gone for 2 days, a black hole of absence that left the entire villa feeling unstable. Jill found herself packing her room, not with the anger of a prisoner, but with the gnawing anxiety of, she didn't know what. She was worried. She was worried about him. He returned late on the second night. She heard the cars, the heavy thud of his office door. She waited, but he did not come to her. After an hour, she could not stand it. She crept down the dark, silent hall to his study. The door was ajar. He was standing at the glass wall, his back to her. He had not turned on the lights. He was just a silhouette against the city. His suit jacket was off, his white shirt was torn at the sleeve, and there was a dark bruise high on his knuckles. He was not physically wounded, not in the way she had healed, but he was vibrating with a contained, dark energy. "Alessandro," she whispered. He did not turn. "You should be in bed, mia cara." "What happened?" she asked, stepping inside. "I had to end it," he said, his voice hollow. He was talking about the threat. He was talking about a rival, a man, a family. He had killed or ordered it, and the weight of it was a physical thing pressing down on him. He finally turned. His face was a mask of exhaustion, his gray eyes black pools of darkness. He looked at her soft, clean presence, and his control, the iron will of the dawn, finally broke. He crossed the room in 2 strides, not with menace, but with a desperate, ragged need. He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair at the soft junction of her neck. He breathed her in, his body shaking. "They are animals," he whispered, his voice thick. "All of it. Sporco, it is all so dirty, except this, except you." He was not the boss. He was not the jailer. He was the man from her floor, wounded in a way she could not stitch, bleeding from a place she could not see. He was the man she had saved. And the healer in her, the part of her that was essential and true, responded. She held him, her arms wrapping around his broad back. Her hands, her steady, gentle hands, moved to his head, holding him, offering him a sanctuary he had never known. "I'm here," she whispered. He lifted his head, his eyes searching hers, dark and raw. He was looking for absolution, for a place to be clean. He kissed her. It was not the controlled, almost kiss from before. It was a desperate, hungry claim, a collision of his darkness and her light. It was not gentle. It was a raw possession, a need so profound it was a kind of surrender. He was giving her his darkness, his violence, his soul, and she was taking it, absorbing it, healing him with the simple, profound act of staying. Her fingers tangled in his slick hair, her body molding to his. The tension that had defined every moment between them finally snapped, and there was no more quiet, no more cages. There was only the roar of 2 worlds colliding, the fall, and the inevitable, terrifying surrender. The villa was different in the morning. The air, usually charged with a quiet, military tension, felt still. The armed guards at the end of the hall seemed to watch her with a new, profound respect as she walked from her room. No, not her room, from his room. Alessandro was already gone, summoned to his office by the demands of the empire he had just violently secured, but the imprint of him was everywhere. On her skin, in the scent of his cologne that clung to her, in the deep, resonant thrum low in her body. Jill felt a strange, vibrating energy. The quiet sadness that had defined her for years, the hollowness of her misty, solitary life, was gone. In its place was a terrifying, vital awareness. She was no longer a ghost. She was awake. Alessandro, when she saw him later that day, was changed. The cold, assessing distance in his gray eyes was gone, replaced by a possessive, watchful fire. He touched her constantly, a hand on the small of her back as they walked, his fingers brushing hers across the table, his gaze lingering on her mouth. He had claimed her, and his protection was no longer an abstract, strategic decision. It was a deeply personal, primal need. She was no longer just an asset he was protecting. She was his, and the world had better beware. Jill found she was not frightened of this possessiveness. It was a stark contrast to the weak, insidious control of her ex. Alessandro's control was a shield, a wall of fire. It was total, but it was, in its dark way, honest. This new, fragile peace was shattered 3 days later. The Falcons were not, it turned out, entirely finished. They were crippled, their leadership decimated, but a few loyal, desperate soldiers remained. And they made one last, suicidal move, not to win the war, but to inflict a final, personal wound. They would take the Dawn's woman. The attack came at dusk, not a frontal assault, but an infiltration. An explosion at the secondary gate was a diversion, drawing the bulk of the guards, while a small, elite team used the chaos to scale the cliffs to her terrace. Alarms blared, a screaming, electronic shriek that sent a flock of birds scattering from the trees. Jill was thrown from the chaise lounge on her balcony, her book skittering across the stone. Before she could even register the fear, Alessandro was there. He had come from his study, moving with a speed she could not believe. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He was all cold, lethal calm. "Inside, now," he commanded. He shoved her into the suite, his body a shield between her and the open doors. "Marco." "Teresa, Tri Yomini," he roared into the intercom. He pushed her toward the en-suite bathroom, which she now saw was a reinforced panic room. He was pulling a sleek, black handgun from a hidden compartment under his desk. "Get in! Lock it!" "Alessandro, what?" "Do it, Jill." His voice was the Dawn's, the voice that commanded armies. He shoved the gun into her hand. Her nursing hands, so steady with a suture, trembled around the cold, heavy steel. "You know how to use this." She shook her head, mute. "You point it at the door. If anyone but me opens it, you pull the trigger until it is empty. Only if I am not breathing. Do you understand me?" She nodded, her eyes wide. He kissed her, a hard, fast kiss that tasted of fear and adrenaline. "I will come for you." He slammed the steel-lined door shut, and she heard the heavy thunk of the magnetic lock. She was plunged into silence, broken only by the muffled sounds of shouting and, terrifyingly, gunfire. She sank to the floor, the gun heavy in her lap, and watched the small monitor that showed the view from her suite. She saw him. Alessandro. He was not her lover. He was not her protector. He was a killer. He moved with a brutal, economic grace, flanked by 2 of his men. An intruder burst through the terrace doors. Alessandro did not hesitate. He fired twice, the movements precise, emotionless. The man fell. Jill felt a wave of nausea, but she could not look away. This was his world. This was the man she had given herself to. It was over in minutes. The silence that fell was heavier, more absolute than any she had ever known. She sat in the dark, her heart hammering, the gun still in her hands. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then she heard the unique electronic beep of the lock. The door hissed open. Alessandro stood there, his beautiful suit torn, his face streaked with grime and a smear of blood that was not his. He was bleeding, a long, superficial graze on his forearm, dripping crimson onto the pale marble floor. He looked at her, saw her safe, and the Dawn's mask dissolved. He slumped against the doorframe, the adrenaline leaving him, leaving just the man. On instinct, she dropped the gun, which clattered loudly, and ran to the first aid kit kept in the bathroom. Her hands, this time, were perfectly steady. She grabbed gauze, antiseptic. She went to him, knelt, and took his arm. He watched her, his breath coming in ragged gasps as she began to clean the wound. Her gentle, practiced motions were the same as they had been that first night in her cottage. "It is finished," he said, his voice rough. "The Falcon family is no more, they are gone." The finality of it hung in the air, the weight of an entire bloodline erased. He looked at her, his gray eyes clear, all shadows, all pretense gone. "I have cleaned the world for you. You are safe now, truly safe from them, from everyone." He put his good hand over hers, stilling her movements. "Jill, I can send you away." She looked up, her hazel eyes meeting his. "I mean it," he said, his voice raw. "Anywhere, America, Australia, a new name, a new identity. You will have millions, you will be free. You will never have to see this again. Never have to hold a gun, never have to watch. This." He motioned to himself, to the blood. He was giving her the choice, the one she had screamed for. His voice was steady, but his hand, the one covering hers, was gripping her with a desperate tightness. Jill looked down at her hands, covered in his blood on his skin. She thought of her little cottage, the mist, the quiet, the emptiness, the quiet sadness. She realized it had not been sadness at all. It had been a waiting, a life unlived. She finished tying the bandage, her hands firm. She lifted her free hand, not to his wound, but to his face, to the scar, the one she now knew so well. "And who will bandage you, Alessandro?" she asked, her voice soft but unbreakable. He stared at her, his iron control shattering. "You called me your sanctuary," she continued, her thumb tracing the scar. "A place to be clean, but what if I don't want to be clean and empty? You didn't just trap me, Alessandro, you woke me up." He pulled her to her feet, his good arms snaking around her waist, crushing her to him. "If you stay," he breathed, his forehead pressed to hers, "if you choose this, Mia Cara, there is no going back. You will not be my guest. You will not be my protected. You will be Mia Regina, my queen, and this world, this dark, bloody world, it will be yours." She kissed him, sealing the choice, a kiss not of surrender, but of acceptance, a kiss of power. "I'm not afraid of your world," she whispered against his lips. "I'm only afraid of being quiet again." He held her, the Don and his queen, in the fortress that had been her prison, and was now, finally, her home. His cold gray eyes were gone, replaced by a fire that matched her own, a fire that lit up the world.